Hi there, my name is Ranjan Bhattacharya. We're here at the Property Coffee Morning, which takes place on the morning of Auction House London sales. And I'm here today with Nick Attwell. Hi there.
Hi there.
Of Attwells Solicitors. He's the senior partner there. And Nick is, we go back more than a decade, don't we? I mean, you've been my lawyer for a long, long time. And what I wanted to talk to you about today, because we're at an auction, and a question that is asked over and over again is about these legal packs, because people see these legal packs online and a lot of it's gobbledygook, and just wondered whether you could share some tips, if you like, of what's in there and what you should look for.
Yeah, I think the key thing with the legal pack is to have a think about, making sure that everything is there. One thing that people say to me is, I've had a look through the legal pack, and that's fine, but you've also got to have a think about, what could be missing from the legal pack too. So obviously the sort of starting point is your special conditions of sale, which will govern the terms of the contract. Remember that, when the hammer falls at the auction, you've exchanged contracts. So, you're tied in at that point and you can't go back. So you've got to have done your due diligence up front.
The special conditions are things that are over and above the general auction conditions that are specific to that lot.
Correct. And therefore, if the seller was trying to put something in that was a little bit sneaky, was trying to make you responsible for arrears, for example, then they may well be in the special conditions. So they need to be looked at in a little bit of detail.
So that's if you're buying a tenanted property.
Correct.
And the existing tenants haven't paid the rent, they make the buyer pay if it's in the special conditions.
Correct. So if it were in the special conditions that the buyer was responsible for the tenant's arrears, then whether you like it or not, you are responsible for the tenant's arrears when the hammer falls. So those need to be checked. Sometimes
is there anything else that crops up in there that is worth looking out for?
Sometimes an agent's fee, so sometimes the seller may try to pass on the auction fee or something like that over to the buyer. The cost of the searches, which is fairly reasonable because you may have to do those, but it's just another cost to be aware of. Sometimes the completion date. I mean, typically you'll have an auction completion date of sort of 28 days after the auction.
Yes.
They could limit that down and make that tighter, of 1 week, 2 weeks, and therefore if you're arranging finance, you need to be aware that you're on a shorter time scale.
And sometimes they extend it. Some
absolutely.
Particularly at Christmas type of auctions, sometimes you see the 6-week completion to give people that extra time.
That's right, and you also may have a situation whereby it's conditional upon something, getting the landlord's consent or something along those lines. So you may feel you've exchanged, but actually there's something else that needs to be done before you can actually complete. So those special conditions are always worth a look. Other things to have a look at, obviously the sort of title itself, to make sure that the person who's selling is actually the owner of the property. To make sure that
Would the auctioneer have done that bit of due diligence, or is it buyer beware on that bit as well?
It's absolutely buyer beware in relation to it all. You as the buyer have to have a look through that auction pack and make sure that everything is in there and that everything is correct. After you bought it at auction, that's sort of the end of it really from that point of view.
Oh well.
So do check that the seller is the seller, that there aren't any unusual restrictions as to what you might want to use the property for. Bear in mind that probably it's at auction for a reason. I think is probably like one of the sort of simplest things, which is that normally they probably put it through an estate agent or commercial agent, unless they need a very fast sale, or there is something unusual or potentially wrong with it. So I think you should always have your sort of radar out and be looking for things.
So I guess sometimes people just require fast, quick sell.
Absolutely.
Sometimes they have to demonstrate that it's a fair and open process, like a public sector body.
Correct.
Other times there may be something wrong with the property physically, and other times there may be something wrong with the property paperwork-wise.
Yes.
And I guess that's where you come in.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that does summarise the particular sort of reasons as to why you might put it into an auction. And the one from our perspective is that there's maybe something wrong with the title. They may be significant arrears or other financial costs that you may not be obviously aware of, and that they're trying to pass on, or something along those lines. And I'd therefore recommend you get that checked out.
Yes.
Searches, they're obviously you need to have a look and make sure that you've done a local search or that there's one in the pack. The usual inquiries about, are there any disputes with neighbours? Are there any sort of problems that aren't apparent from the title? You'd expect to see that in the auction pack. too. So I think you should be looking at it and asking yourself the question of, is everything that's normal there?
Yes, because otherwise that's the point of no return.
Correct.
And would you say that with freehold properties, sometimes you can have a remarkably clean land registry title
Yep.
with not much there?
Yep.
But typically with leasehold properties, there can be a lot more, particularly service charge and all of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only one to watch maybe on the freehold title is something like a sort of possessory title, whereby the person's put it in because they've only got, say, squatters' rights, and they're not the real true, sort of legal paper title owner. So that's something to check in terms of, making sure you could then finance it. But generally, freehold should be fine and should be apparent from looking at the register. On the leasehold side, it's looking out for, is the lease long enough? I mean, it's another obvious one, but making sure that you've got a mortgageable term on your lease. Checking on the arrears, that nothing's been trying to be passed over to you there.
Or major works notices.
Absolutely, major works notices, that there's some big sort of roof repairs coming down the line, that's why the sellers put it into auction, is because they're not in a position to pay for those. So yeah, I think the leasehold one is one you've got to sort of be a little bit more careful on.
So I think really to summarise, when people are buying at auction, you've got to look at the property physically, but you've also got to check the paperwork out. And anything that's not immediately clear or understandable to you, you really should get a lawyer to check it out and do some sort of report on title.
Yeah, and I mean that's what we do. I mean, we just do a quick turnaround of a review of those auction packs, and any other lawyer can do it also for you. You just run through that and just say, is there anything here that I should think about before buying, or in terms of getting finance, which is the other key aspect as well.
Yeah, I know I've come to you several times and said, can you just look through this and tell me, will I get a mortgage on it?
Correct.
And that's really the question I want to know.
Yeah, that is.
The other stuff you can take a view on.
Yeah, that is it good and marketable title, which is what a lender wants to know as well.
Brilliant. Well, we can go on and talk about legal packs all day. If you want to get in touch with Nick, it's Attwells Solicitors.
Correct.
And Attwells.com.
Yeah, Attwells.com.
You're based in St John's Wood.
Yep.
And I always make a little joke that you outsource to the Far East, which is where?
Ipswich.
Ipswich, yes. And an office there as well. So get in touch with Nick if you want to get anything checked out in terms of legal work. The Property Coffee Morning is a sister event to the Baker Street Property Meet. We pretty much meet 7 times a year, and we meet on the day of the Auction House London property auction right here in central London. So see you at an event, and if you scroll around this page you'll see other videos with interesting people in property. Bye for now.